What's up, y'all? This is John and Mike back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight we are not on Millions, and it is also not tonight. We are a little inside the park baseball here. Mike had Good Friday off. I don't normally work Fridays. He's going on vacation next week, so it is currently 9:18 a.m. on Friday morning. So neither of us are drinking alcohol, I believe.
No, nope, not here.
Oh, yep, same over here. But we are getting the episode out, so no real baseball or softball updates. We can talk a little bit about basketball because they played earlier in the week, but I mean it's going to be a great day for sports all around on Friday because that's the day we're talking about.
Mm.
Braves game 3:05. Georgia starts their series against Tennessee. Georgia baseball, Georgia softball starts their series today. I am still in the process of waking up. The caffeine has not hit yet, so I don't remember who they're playing. Um,
Yeah, I
but
have no idea.
yeah, I that's on me. That's on me. I literally looked at it 30 minutes ago. Had no idea. Um, but tonight we're pretty excited about this. We put a lot of work into this episode. We are talking about the tiers of college football blue bloods since the century started. We're going to be taking away some blue blood status from a few programs and, you know, probably a little bit of basketball at the end because we're pretty excited about that. Um,
Sure.
but I know we just talked a few days ago. How you been?
Great, man. Great. Relatively low key week at work. Like you said, I had a Good Friday off, which is, the day we're recording, so that's cool. That's not usually a thing that happens, at least here. I haven't had that happen. That's cool. Got next week off going down to Orlando for a few days. Got Airbnb there, so let's do. I'm not going to any parks or anything that I know of, knock on wood, because I'm
Good
still
for you.
paying
Good
for
for
the
you.
last time that we went. Um, Uh, but uh, but yeah, man, it's looking forward. We got like 6 weeks left of school, so it's going well. How about you?
Good, good. I mean, me and you got some great news the other day. We'll actually have to wait to share that, but
Hmm.
honestly, this week is probably the first week in a long time where I've had just a string of good days. Like,
Hmm.
for no real reason, just in a good mood all day, nothing bad's happened, just actually having good days for no reason
Hmm.
and enjoying it while it lasts because it probably won't be long.
So I was talking to my brother yesterday. Yesterday was his 30th birthday, and we were talking for a little bit. And this is kind of big picture, but everyone always dreads like getting into the 30s and stuff like that. And I told him, I'm like, my 30s have been way better than my 20s. My 20s were fine, but my 30s have been exponentially better. So there's that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 30 yet, at least I don't think. I look, I don't I've probably said this before. I don't keep track of how old I am. I know that sounds stupid, and I should just know, but I don't think about it. Like, I just normally tell people that I'm the same age as Kelsey, even though she's almost a year older than me, because I can remember her age. I don't know mine.
It's probably for the best. I only know it because kids ask me all the time. I'm like, yep, I'm old. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't have any hair. You're right. You're right. It's just all on my face and back. Yeah.
What you should start telling them is that you're 18, and everybody starts losing their hair at 18 now because of the quality of the water.
Especially in the Atlanta area. They had their issue with that, but we won't get into that. But yeah. That's why I told him, like, you know what? When you turn 18, buddies, and start falling out, if you win like best hair in high school, it's a curse and you're gonna lose it. Not that I want it, but people that I know that have won it are completely bald now at 30 something. So
Has
there you
nothing
go.
to do with genetics. It's all how popular your hair was in high school and the quality of the water.
Yeah.
Um, so don't drink water and don't have friends. That's all I'm telling you, kids.
Yeah. Solid advice for sure.
Oh. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this. I have a feeling this is going to be a real good and also probably long episode. Um, Tier 1. It's probably going to surprise a little bit of people when we say this, but it's the Alabama tier. I mean, Alabama is far and away the only team on this level, at least throughout the 2000s in college football. Um, since the beginning of the 2000s, I mean, they weren't great for Alabama. They had some single digit win seasons and a season where they had to vacate all their wins, 2005 under Shula. But come 2007, Nick Saban shows up. Um, Pretty sure everybody here knows that name because since 2007, Alabama has won 6 national championships. All of them are legit because this started in the BCS era. None that were random magazine claimed titles or I just, you know, if for being honest, that 1940 is it 42 championship that Alabama claims where they went like 6-6, but one newspaper in Alabama said they were national champions.
It might be.
Yeah,
And are we claiming 2020 as legit in this
it's
high in this week?
it it's legit because it was a fully sanctioned season by the NCAA, the SEC, the college football playoff. Like you can't say it's a non-existent season,
Hmm.
but you can say that there at least deserves to be a tiny asterisk next to it.
They did win 10 SEC games.
Right.
I mean,
So it
that
was
even yeah, COVID not weird things, be damned. Still win 10-0 in the SEC, which has never been done and will never be done again.
yeah. Um the issue is I don't know if it was like a uh, social distancing thing, but something else that's never been done was playing defense in the 2020 season. Nobody did it.
Yeah,
So
you can tackle, you can
yeah,
practice tackling. You can get too close.
yeah. So that's probably a significant reason on why they did as well as they did because defense did not exist during 2020.
That's why Navy was so like historically bad and got their coach fired that year is because I guess in Annapolis like state rules had like they really couldn't tackle, they couldn't practice defense like their social distancing stuff. So yeah, that has nothing to do with Alabama, but 2020 was weird. We don't talk about that enough
Yeah.
anymore.
And honestly, I'm okay with that because
Yeah,
it brings up anger in different groups for different reasons.
yeah.
Um, but there were seasons since 2007 was or 2008 was 10 wins where they won a Capital One Bowl against Michigan State. Their worst season
Worst.
was still 10 wins.
Their floor was 10 wins. Yeah.
They have spent 60 weeks ranked in the college football playoff poll, 24 of those at number one. Since 2000, Alabama averages 10.5 wins per season. They have 4 Heisman winners since 2009. That's Mark Ingram,
Derrick Henry,
Derrick
Devontae
Henry.
Smith, yeah, Derrick Henry, Devontae Smith, and Bryce Young.
I wanted to say Devin Henry so bad. Guys, this is why we don't record in the morning. Um,
Mhm.
brain power on like 10%. Most of the time I can get away with it being at 40, 50, but we're actually rounding up for 10. We're actually like 9.52. So we're rounding.
There you go.
Um, Second most wins all time behind Michigan. And yeah, if you have a problem with Alabama being in their own tier, you just haven't watched college football over the last 15 years, 16
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody can have a good faith argument and say that Alabama's not the top program in the last 24, well, even like 24, 25 years if we want to go all the way back to 2000. They had even some decent seasons in there. They had obviously one or two really bad ones, but I mean, they've been the premier program and they belong on a tier all by themselves.
I forgot what I was about to say.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not really any argument with Alabama. Like again, if you do, it's not good faith. You're just being a hater.
And we're okay with that. But you just have
Yeah,
to be aware and acknowledge that you're being a hater.
yeah.
If you're a hater, say you're a hater. I am sometimes. I'm not even
Mm,
going to lie to you about it. But you
I'm a
just have
huge
to be
hater.
honest.
Yeah.
Tier 2, probably another shocker here for some people. And this is a tier of teams that are always in contention. Definitely Bluebloods of the 21st century. Starting it off, this is probably the shocker of the list here, for us at least. Ohio
Mm,
State. They won two national titles this century, 2002 and 2014. Um, and the only time they've won less than 10 games was when they had to vacate their wins or had sanctions.
yep.
So they have spent 60 weeks in the college football playoff poll, 5 weeks at number one, winning record against both Michigan and Penn State this century, consistently in top five in recruiting. Since 2000, they have 11 Big Ten championships. Since 2000, they have averaged 10.79 wins per season. They've also had two undefeated seasons this century. 2012 was obviously the bowl ban year. Um, and as much as everyone, including us, has a very rational, deep seated hate for Ohio State, they're one of the best five teams since the year 2000. And it's not, once again, it's not really up for debate.
Hmm. Again, I'm probably the biggest Ohio State hater of this, and I like when I kind of typed out this part of it. They're behind Alabama, like they're the best program in college football, as much as that pains me to say, at least consistently. Even that you said the 10.79 wins per season, that includes the COVID year where they didn't even play 10 games.
Yeah,
I just did straight up math. Again, not my strong suit, but I just went wins since 2013 all the way through 2000.
yeah,
10.79 wins per year. Insane. Now, granted, like Michigan was down a whole, a decent part of that decade. We'll get to Michigan in a little while. Penn State was up and down, and then the Big Ten just did Big Ten things and just very, very top heavy as it's been for pretty much its entire existence. But Ohio State definitely deserves to be in this tier for sure.
next team is probably not a surprise to anybody with all the love we've given them over the last couple of years. We've got LSU. Three titles this century: '03, '07, 2019, all with different head coaches. Five SEC titles: '01, '03, '07, 2011, and 2019. Their floor is normally 8 wins. They had six in 2021 and five in 2020, but they went 5-5 in 2020. Um, they've won at least 10 games 13 times in the last 24 seasons. Since 2000, LSU has averaged 9.7 wins per year, 45 weeks in the college football playoff poll, with being number one for 3 weeks. How are they only number one for 3 weeks?
I don't know. I went on the actual CFP website for that, and it's hard to believe that they were not. I mean, it must have been like Alabama at number one in 2019 for a good chunk of it, and
Until
then once
LSU
they beat
beat
them,
them.
yeah, it's 3 weeks. That's criminal because that team is the best team all year.
Yeah, like I don't understand how you could watch LSU. Well, the problem is the playoff committee doesn't always watch the games. But if you watched LSU throughout the entire season and then finally got to the week that they make their first poll and it's like, oh yeah, they're definitely number three team in the country. That's insanity.
Like the only close games they had that year were against Auburn, where I think they won by like a touchdown or less, and then the Alabama game. All the rest of them were pretty much blowouts against
Texas
good
was
teams.
close until the
Oh
end.
yeah, yeah. And the schedule they played was insane that year.
It
Like the
really
heart,
was.
like up there with like Florida this year in terms of like schedule difficulty, at least on paper.
Yeah, that was still the era of Texas thinking they were good for the first 3 weeks and then not
Mm.
being good. But
Yeah.
man, you during that time, if you played Texas in week one or week two, they were tough.
The top 10
national
win for you if you beat
championship
them.
was won in week one for like 5 years in a row. Texas wins.
Hmm. Definitely.
And another reason LSU is where we put them here, arguably the greatest team of all time in 2019. I just, really, really difficult to debate that one.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Again, I don't think we're gonna get much pushback from LSU right here in this spot.
Next one. This may surprise a lot of people in that we actually did try to make this list without bias. I
Mhm.
very hard to believe coming from us in this show. We did try very hard to take bias out of this list and just look at numbers and stats. But the next team here, Georgia, probably a little surprising, especially since a lot of people think that Georgia's only been good the last 4 years if you haven't really paid attention.
Mhm.
But Georgia's got two national championships, obviously 2021, 2022, played in the college football playoff in 2017. They have spent 15 total weeks as a college football playoff number one team, 48 total weeks in the college football playoff rankings. Since 2000, they have only had less than 8 wins once. Once. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, six in 2010, the infamous Joe Cox season.
Yep.
Um, Mark Richt averaged 10 wins per season, and Kirby is 94 and 16. Five of those losses came in 2016.
Mhm.
Since 2000, Georgia's averaged 10.33 wins per season. And with Alabama losing Saban and Michigan getting a whole new coaching staff, Georgia is seemingly the undisputed ruler of college football at this point. Only three teams have averaged 10 wins a year since 2000. The other two are Ohio State and Alabama.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, yeah. Biases aside, you can't argue the numbers there.
Right, and that's actually a conversation I had with Will Ogburn from the SDS podcast a couple years ago when he was in Savannah, because he asked why so many Georgia fans still loved Mark Richt, and I told him I was like, would you rather have a minimum 10 wins a year, be in contention for the conference pretty much every year, or go 12 and 0, 6 and 6, 10 and 2, 6 and 6, 11 and 1, 6 and 6. Like if you're giving
Mhm.
me the option of 10 and 2 every year or every other year be fighting for a bowl game, give me 10 and 2.
Absolutely. I mean, you go back to like the 90s. I mean, Jim Donnan was there right before Rick got there, but the 90s and then like the 90s were not great. So to basically build the program up from where he did, and then it continued and got even better under Kirby. You can't hate the man. He built the foundation, and then Kirby, added on to it.
Yeah. Um Next team on this list, probably once again going to surprise some people. And I keep saying that mainly because I feel like the blue blood conversation, people are looking at like all time wins. And in
Mhm.
that situation, you're talking about teams that literally played YMCA's and hardware stores. And you're talking about 50 to 70 years pre racial integration
Mhm.
of wins before you get to even close to the modern era of college football. And that's kind of what we're doing in the 21st century is because college football has, I think, changed more since the year 2000 than it did between 1970 and 1999.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like it's a different conversation when you're talking 20th century and 21st century. So once again, this might surprise a few people, but we have Clemson, two national championships, both in the college football playoff. They've made the playoff 6 times, second in number of appearances behind Alabama, 54 weeks in the college football playoff poll, being ranked number one for a total of 8 weeks. That's honestly real surprising.
Yeah.
Um, but man, the more you look into the college football playoff poll numbers, the weirder it gets.
And they changed the the committee every year too. So I think, and that kind of screws up things too, because every committee has, I mean, they're supposed to have the same criteria, but they value different things, in different proportions and stuff like that. So it
And then
gets
the
wonky.
eye test is like half of your reasoning. It's
Yeah.
always odd.
Let's say eye test. It should just be their bias. All right, my bias says 50% of this is just what I thought before I watched any games.
Yeah, that. Oh, sorry. No, especially going back to Ohio State last year being ranked above Georgia for how long in the playoff poll,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's
It was a
like,
couple
oh
weeks.
well, Ohio State passes the eye test. Yeah, Ohio State's also playing like a Purdue team that is 4-8. Like
Mm.
let's be real here.
Well, and that Notre
What?
Dame win was overvalued too.
Yeah,
I guess Notre Dame should have won that game, but anyway.
and it's like, okay, put Purdue in the SEC. Tell me
Mm.
they're not on Vanderbilt or Mississippi State's level this year. Tell me that, and I'll
Yeah,
know you're lying.
they might be, honestly, they might be worse.
Right, especially last year. And
Yeah.
Purdue, before they went through a coaching change, was a group of fighters. This this
Mm.
past season, they were not.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically a feeder program for other Big Ten schools, just like Vandy is at this point for other SEC schools.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
color scheme too.
Both engineer. Well, never mind. Both good academically. Vanderbilt's obviously better, but anyway.
Between 2000 and 2010, Clemson averaged around 8 wins, but from 2011 to 2022, they have won at least 10 games, with the exception of last year, in which they won 9. Um, the Duke loss really derailed their season. But
Yeah.
losing a defensive battle in week one, that's something Clemson hasn't done since 2021. I don't know why we didn't expect it.
Right.
Between 2015 and 2019, they averaged 14 wins a season.
It's insane. 14 wins a season.
12 game regular season, they averaged 14.
Yeah. Crazy.
Uh, so we put them here. Since 2000, Clemson averaged 9.8 wins per season. We put them in this category because they were a premier program in the playoff era. But since NIL has started, they've kind of tapered off just a little bit, with Dabo not embracing the NIL of anyone but Jesus Christ. They don't use the transfer portal unless it's to get a backup quarterback that they want to turn into a coach. We really should probably try to get on somebody with Clemson this offseason,
Yeah.
maybe shortly after the spring game, to try and figure out if they are going to adapt or if
Die.
fans are going to get fed up with Dabo.
Yeah. That's something definitely we could talk about with somebody in the know. Somebody in the cult of Clemson.
Does Clemson get resurrected on the third season? People are asking. And for an Easter weekend, that is a good joke.
It is. It is. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, moving on to the next tier, and this is the tier of inconsistency. Teams that were considered blue bloods, if you take in the entire history of college football, but have been kind of in and out of contention throughout the 21st century. First team on the list, Michigan. Some people are probably asking how a team that has made the college football playoff the last 3 seasons and won last year's college football playoff is in the inconsistent tier. And it's because of every year they had between 2000 and 2021.
Yep.
So they've spent 42 weeks ranked in the college football playoff poll, only one at the number one spot, three playoff appearances like we just talked about, and the fluctuation is just what killed them and put them down into this tier. From 2000 to 2007, they were a consistent 9-10 win team. In 2006, the loss to Ohio State cost them a chance to play for the national championship. 2007 started the season with losses to App State and Oregon. Um, Coach Lloyd Carr retired at the end of the year. Rich Rod went 15-20 in his 3 years in Ann Arbor. Brady Hoke beat Ohio State in his first year in 2011, won the Sugar Bowl, but didn't win more than 8 games for the rest of his time there. He had an 8-win, 7-win, and a 5-win season. And then Jim Harbaugh shows up. Um, they've would win at least 10 games in 6 of the next 9 seasons, winning double-digit games in 6 9 seasons, including 3 college football playoff appearances and a national title. Since the year 2000, Michigan has averaged 8.66 wins per season, including the COVID year. And they hired a first-time head coach to take over for Harbaugh. So what the program looks like moving forward, no one really knows.
Mm.
But Sharon Moore coached as many regular season games as Harbaugh did last year, so he does have some experience.
He does. Yeah, he's
He'll be a second year head coach by halfway through the season next year.
right. Yeah, it will be. I think the bigger part with them, like going forward, is just you know, talent acquisition and stuff like that. I mean, they're supposed to be hitting the like high school recruiting in the portal harder under Sharon, but we'll see. They lost. Michigan hasn't recruited like Georgia or Alabama, and I think that's not really saying anything too out there that nobody knows. But it's not like Georgia loses 15 guys to the draft or 14 guys to the draft or whatever, and then they just reload. Michigan's not in that stratosphere of recruiting quite yet. So they may have they might break Georgia's record for the most guys drafted in a single draft, but do they have the guys behind them that are ready to go? I don't know. My guess would be probably not. They have some, I'm sure, but I mean, replacing the quarterback, replacing your head coach, replacing all this stuff. So um, Michigan's not winning the Big Ten this year. They're going to fall kind of back to that 9-10 win plateau.
And they had who was it? The defensive back that decided to come back for one more year. Can't
Yeah.
remember his name.
Rod Moore tore his ACL in spring practice. He was the guy that got
Yes.
the game-sealing interception against Ohio State this
Yes.
season or this past season. So that hurts too. And then they lost Keon Saab to Alabama, so their secondary, they're replacing that secondary as well. So
If there's any good news for them, it's that Ohio State lost their receivers and quarterback.
I mean, it's Oregon's conference, which we'll talk about when we get to Oregon, but Oregon's going to win it this year.
Question about big picture stuff, and we're actually working on trying to do a full episode on the future of Ohio State. Does the entire state of Ohio just go up in flames if a new head coach, new quarterback, new running back, depleted secondary Michigan beats Ohio State this year?
The game's in Columbus. I think Ryan Day will have to hide somewhere in the stadium for a few weeks because there'll be a mob out there ready to like set him on fire.
Hey, he can ask former Ohio State of Ohio great Baker Mayfield about living in a stadium.
That he did. Don't ever forget Progressive Field or Stadium, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, he did it. I refuse to believe that that commercial wasn't true. Like it was
So
documented.
Kanye lived in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for a little while making one of his albums.
You could tell me Kanye funded an expedition to the moon to record an album, and I'd be like, okay, that tracks.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's that. Yeah, for
I've heard
sure.
crazier things.
He'll do them.
Next team on the list, probably the opposite of Notre Dame or Kanye. Notre Dame, fairly opposite ends of the spectrum here. Um, they made the college football playoff twice in the BCS national championship game in 2012. They have 0 titles this century. 49 weeks in the playoff poll, but they have peaked at number 2 for 4 weeks. Since 2000, they have 4 losing seasons and 2 500 seasons at 6-6. From 2002 to 2011, they only had 2 10-win seasons. Between 2012 2023, they had 8 double-digit win seasons. They've averaged 8.41 wins per season, and the program seems to be in a pretty good place. And they're still the biggest game on everyone's schedule, so they have to be considered a blue blood, but they're more fringy. They're light blue. They're light blue.
They're baby
Um,
blue. They're baby blue blood.
since the last national championship was 1988 with Ryan Day's arch enemy, and that is 127-year-old Lou Holtz.
Hmm. Oh my God! Can you imagine? Man, if another thing, if Ohio State loses to Michigan at the end of the year, like Lou Holtz will just be there'll be a video of him just like laughing and spitting everywhere. You know, and I'm here for it. I'll have that as my background,
Can we get that man a face guard for when he does that? Just one of those face shields that you had people wearing on planes in 2020.
like the or like the SWAT thing, the SWAT helmet.
Good
There we
lord.
go.
Oh, um, Texas. They're on this team. They're on this tier. They've won the 2005 BCS National Championship, made it back in 2009, made the college football playoff once. A lot of people say that Texas may have won that game in 2009 had it not been for a couple brutal injuries early in that game. But, you know, for Alabama fans that hate that conversation, they sure do talk about injuries losing them national championships.
That's ironic. Yeah,
It is. No excuses except when it benefits.
yeah.
22 weeks in the college football playoff poll. Highest was number three. From 2000 to 2009, Texas won at least 9 games and had at least 10 wins 8 different times. From 2010 to 2022, they only won double digit games twice, and that is in 2018 when they played Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and 2023 when they obviously made the college football playoff. In that time span, they were not bowl eligible 3 times and didn't win more than 8 games 10 times. Since 2000, Texas average is 8.875 wins per season. With all that said, Texas is coming off a playoff appearance, seems to be rolling with Sark and the new NIL rules. I will say, being in this tier still does not qualify them as back. If anything, they dropped for a very long time and have gone up one single rung of the ladder.
Hmm.
Um, they're still on the outside of being back, just being a little peeping longhorn, looking through the window, like trying to get the right angle for the blinds.
It's Squidward watching Patrick and SpongeBob playing outside.
Yes. Who are the teams they're watching?
Georgia and Bama, I would assume.
Okay.
Maybe Ohio State and Georgia.
Okay. I think either of those are acceptable answers. Maybe Ohio
Yeah.
State a little bit more because we don't know what Kalen DeBoer is going to do.
That's fair.
Next team, the team that is joining Texas in coming to the SEC this year, Oklahoma, won the BCS championship in 2000, playing for a title in 2003, 2004, and 2008. They have spent a total of 52 weeks, so 1 full year in the college football playoff poll, making the playoff 4 times, with all 4 of those being losses. Since 2000, they've won at least 10 games 19 times. They
That's
were
easy. Yeah.
by far the best Big 12 team for pretty much the entire century so far. Since 2000, Oklahoma averages 10.6 wins per season. That surprised me. I guess there are
Hmm.
4 teams that have averaged 10 wins a season.
Yeah, I get yeah.
Um,
With Oklahoma, a lot of their success is kind of like Clemson in the 2010s is what Oklahoma was in the 2000s, like the 2000 through 2009 era.
yeah, I the biggest problem with Oklahoma really since Bob Stoops retired is defense. Like
Mhm.
they can't. I think they really need to go look up a dictionary, figure out how to spell it, and then call around, see how to coach it,
Mhm.
and then try to get it on the field because they haven't done any of those things.
Yeah,
in quite some
they're
time.
gonna have to get that Big 12 defensive mentality out like ASAP if they're gonna do anything in the SEC.
Yeah, if they bring the defense that they've played with the last few years into the SEC, 6-6.
Yeah, their schedule's harder than Texas. We talked about that before, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna be tough for them.
like this Oklahoma team, it would not shock me if they completely drop off a cliff, and it also would not shock me if they go like 10-2, 11-1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
They probably have the widest range of outcomes for this season.
The lowest season ceiling and the highest floor. No, opposite.
Yep.
Highest ceiling, highest. Well, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say.
It, neither of us are
Maybe.
awake yet. Give us a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oregon, 38 weeks ranked in the college football playoff poll, peaking at number 2 for 5 weeks. National runner-up in 2010 and in the first playoff, it was 2014. That is their sole playoff appearance. I cannot even tell you the number of seasons where Oregon just won the last game of the season. They were in the college football playoff and could never do it.
Yep.
And then at the same time, they stopped other teams from winning the last game of the year and going to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So Oregon is consistently a good team, probably the best or most consistent team west of Texas. Since between 2000 and 2023, 14 double-digit win seasons. If you include 2020, where they only played 7 games, they only played like 9.
Yeah.
So 7 of 9 equates to 10-2 in a full season. They've only missed out on bowl twice since 1994. Since 2000, they've averaged 9.33 wins per season. Even though they've had a lot of coaches, they've had 6 since the year 2000. They are consistently a top team in the Pac-10 slash 12 slash now probably will win the Big Ten this year. They do not have a national championship, even though we all thought they were getting one in 2014. But they can recruit, and especially with Dan Lanning, and they're going to be in the national conversation every year, it seems.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to fall off. And like we talked about it after the national championship, but Oregon's probably the best equipped, like of the teams that are changing conferences, even maybe even more so than Texas is coming to SEC. Oregon's gonna. I don't think they're gonna miss a beat coming into the Big Ten. It's gonna be them and Ohio State, playing for the Big Ten championship wherever they end up playing it this year, if it's Vegas or Indianapolis or wherever.
And I will say, the last time Ohio State and Oregon played, Oregon beat them, and that was the loss that kept Ohio State out of the college football playoff. Just saying. Just saying.
Hate to see it. Not really.
I was about to say, I've got a different 4-letter word for it, but hate is something you're able to use.
Yeah.
Probably the next shocker on the list here, Florida State. If this was an argument for Bluebloods in the 80s and 90s, Florida State would probably be number 1.
Yeah.
Probably not much of an argument. They won 2 national titles, 93 and 99. They spent most of the 90s finishing in the top 4 or 5 in the AP poll. The 21st century has not been nearly as nice to the Seminoles. Florida State made the college football playoff once in 2014. They did win the last BCS title in 2013. They've spent a total of 30 weeks in the college football playoff poll and finished ranked. Hold on, let me reread this. And finished ranked in the college football playoff poll 5 out of the 10 years of the 4-team era. Since 2010, Florida State finished with 10 or more wins 10 times. They've averaged 8.83 wins per season. They only missed out on a bowl game twice in the 21st century, and before that first time they missed out on a bowl, they had the longest active bowl streak in college football history.
Yep.
Like that was Florida State was the model of consistency until Jimbo left.
Yeah.
He kind of left a trail of gas and dropped a match to that program, but that's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah.
Florida State and Clemson are the premier programs in the ACC, and Florida State is really one of the few teams that got better when they changed conferences. They joined the ACC in '92 after being independent. How funny would it be if Florida State and Clemson play for the ACC title game? Great game. One of their
Yeah,
highest viewed title games in recent memory. And then, like, a week later, the courts decide that they can leave without paying an exorbitant amount of money.
that would be incredible. I would love to see it. Just another L for the ACC and all that. That would be radical.
You would have, it would be just three power conferences.
Hmm.
Because as soon as that happens,
Well, what would be the other? What would be the other one besides the Big Ten and SEC? Would it be the Big 12?
it would be the Big 12 because the good teams in the ACC would split between the three conferences.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to assume Virginia Tech, because if Florida State and Clemson can get out, you have to assume you got Virginia Tech, UNC, Duke, Miami's probably going somewhere.
Mhm.
Georgia Tech's probably going somewhere because they're academics and they're pretty good at other sports.
Well, and the fact they're in Atlanta, that helps a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
I think SMU would be welcomed into the Big 12 with open arms.
But they weren't before though. While everybody else was getting around them, they would ignore SMU.
Is SMU like Trevor Bauer? They're like, oh, you were accused of something once, now you can never be good again. And it's like, well, SMU
Yeah.
is probably one of the most consistently good group of five teams over the last 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
let's calm down a little bit.
Well, now they're in the ACC, so that would be not getting paid for it, but that's why.
That's
Maybe it's a bias against Methodists. I don't know.
uh, okay. I don't know anything about Methodists to have an opinion. So
I don't either.
okay,
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they just don't know.
people are afraid of what they don't understand.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I hope that doesn't.
That's the video.
Did you get your lagging as much as I did?
No,
Oh
no.
boy, it sounded like you were about to start a rap video from the '90s. It just goes, yeah, 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 yeah.
Check it out. Uh, well, my mic went out for a second. It got unplugged. So
Oh, okay. It just, it was funny. Um,
I hope it makes it to the audio version. That would be fun. I need to hear it.
so teams that are debatable if they are still blue bloods. USC. They won two BCS national titles, played for another. 33 total weeks spent ranked in the college football playoff poll, but only finished inside of the top 25 seven times. Their highest college football playoff ranking was fourth in 2022. Since 2000, they've won double digit games 12 times, but they've missed out on bowl games three times. Since 2000, they've averaged 9.04 wins per season. They have been the AP number one team for at least 1 week in six different seasons. Outside of 2022, USC kind of has been a nobody since Pete Carroll left following the 2009 season. And that coaching instability and lack of any kind of defense has really been the problem. With all that said, USC did take a dip in recruiting in the 2010s, but Lincoln Riley seems to be getting them back on track in terms of bringing talent into the program. But I think one of the biggest reasons they're solidly in this tier is because of their current coach. We just praised Lincoln Riley. Here's the time to take it all back. But because for everything he's done on the offensive side of the ball and how good they've been, which is significant, like he has coached some of the best offenses of the 21st century. I don't think there's really much of a debate there. But his defenses have been just as bad as the offenses have been good.
Yeah.
It's I, Defense is really the problem, and honestly, it seems like they're turning it around for at least the 2025 recruiting class because their biggest problem has been defensive line. not really able to get any pressure or do anything consistently. And I mean, they've currently got two 5 stars committed to them for the defensive line for the next year's
Yeah, the
class.
kid, yeah, the five-star kid they flipped from Georgia a couple of days ago that's going to USC. He's actually visiting Georgia again, I think like next week or something. So we'll see if that flip ends up staying with that.
And honestly, a lot of times when defensive players flip to USC, I'm, thinking, oh, well, it's just for the money, it's this and that. But if USC can put enough good defensive pieces together for that class, it makes sense because you're going to have a ton of talent around you. You're going to get playing time because nobody else is going to really be on your level. So, with enough guys coming in that class, it actually makes a lot of sense for more defensive players to go. Speaking of defense, Penn State. That's about the only thing they've done well under James Franklin.
Yeah.
Um, and this is probably where we start getting to the leaning away from blue blood status. Penn State has never made the college football playoff. They've been ranked in the playoff poll for a total of 36 weeks since it started in 2014. Their highest playoff ranking at any point was number 4, but their highest final ranking was 5th in 2016, just missing out. In their 130 seasons of football, they've spent a total of 21 weeks as the number 1 team in the country. They were ranked in the preseason AP poll 49 times and finished ranked in the AP 45 times. I just want to reiterate something that I have said multiple times over the last year. Start Penn State at number 15 in the polls. It doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter what happened in the offseason. It doesn't matter if every other team in the country has decided they're not playing football this year. Put them at 15 and make them prove they deserve where they're ranked.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because every year, they're like a top 10 team and then look awful every week. And then finally they lose to Michigan or Ohio State and get dropped to like 15 to 18. And it's like, this is where they should have been. If you
Right.
watched the games, if you watched the games, this is where they should have been all season.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Since 2000 they have 8 seasons where they won at least 10 games. But on the flip side, they have 5 seasons where they had 5 wins or fewer. Since 2000, Penn State averaged 8.16 wins per season. A normal season since 2000 is between 7 and 8 wins. A little bit skewed for the early 2010s due to the scandal that happened up there, as it should have been. I'm with the scope of what happened, honestly, a little surprised that they didn't have that they were allowed to play football the next season.
Right.
I,
I mean, the talk of the death penalty was a real thing at that time.
yeah, it, that's I haven't dug into it a whole lot, and honestly, I don't want to because it's now a decade and old, and it's probably just going to piss me off and make me sad at the same time.
Mhm.
But it shocking that they got off as light as they did, and it still took them years to recover.
Mhm. Yeah, It's so like right before the whole scandal and all that came out, I remember saying because like Stanley was like had just been born. I'm like, you know what? If Joe Pa's still there when Stanley's old enough to play college football, I want him to go to Penn State. That was a freezing cold take. Like it was literally like a week later that all the shit went down.
Yeah, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
But since hiring James Franklin, they've really been the Kentucky of the Big Ten, and that's not to be negative towards Kentucky. If anything, it's kind of meant to be more positive because they're winning all of the games they should win, and then getting kicked around in top tier games. Like Penn State has beaten Ohio State once in the
Yeah.
playoff era.
Mm.
To be fair, we talked about it last week. It's one of my favorite games to watch. That was literally my fourth game on that list that
Mm.
we cut off at three. Um,
That Penn State should have made the playoff in 2016. They
exactly.
should have.
They should have been the first two-loss team to make the playoff. You can't
Mhm.
beat a team that makes the playoff and win your conference, and then everybody's like, well, no, put Penn State in.
They had a way better argument than FSU did, I think. I
Uh,
think.
that's an interesting conversation. We might table that for a slow part of the offseason.
Yeah, right.
Um, but Penn State hasn't been nearly as dominant as they used to be since joining the Big Ten in 1993. They've only won the conference three times in the 2000s, 05, 08, and then that 2016 season. And this, like we said, this is the tipping point on the seesaw where you're like, they they got they're up there in all time wins. They've got a few national championships, but you haven't done anything lately.
Yeah, I would probably lean on them not being a blue blood, and
Right.
then the rest of the teams that we talk about not being that either.
A few of
Um,
these teams have an avenue to come back,
oh yeah, for sure.
but
Especially now with the expanded playoff. Yeah.
I don't know if Penn State has that avenue.
It's
Just
just
be
it's just gonna be harder for them going forward with having USC and Oregon in the Big Ten as well. They have to go through that too, in addition to Michigan and Ohio State, and Michigan State probably being a better team than they had been. And then UCLA jumps up there occasionally, and then Washington again they fluctuate quite a bit too. They were left off all these. Washington was left off all these lists altogether, but they could have had an argument as well for being like a fringe blue blood team as well.
I mean, if you're Penn State, you just went from solidly the third best team in your conference to trying to figure out if you're in fifth or not.
If they were in the Big Ten West, since they went East and West in there, they would have played for the championship
Every
probably every year.
Yeah,
If not, they might have missed once or twice to like Wisconsin, but they would have made it like every year under James Franklin.
yeah,
But they're in the
and
East, so they're always the third best team.
yeah, and I mean they're third best team in the entire conference
Yeah, it was very
until
loaded
they
that way.
added four more teams, and now you're like, we're probably fifth,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe.
fifth, six, yeah,
Yeah, I was about to say they're going to be fighting for fifth.
yeah,
Their uphill climb just got a lot further and a lot steeper, and that's kind of why I don't know if Penn State will be considered a blue blood again.
yeah. Not with James Franklin. They'll be good. They'll be a fringe playoff team every year, but they'll just get smacked by whoever they play in the first round on whatever campus they have to go to.
Speaking of a team that's probably in a very similar position, Tennessee.
Hmm.
We're just going to throw out their last national championship was 1998. Probably the only bit of bias we have in these stats. Um,
Are you gonna watch their last national championship on that VCR you found?
no, I'm not going to pay for that.
Maybe
Also, it's
there's a
probably
bootleg
on
version of it
YouTube.
somewhere, but it's not the same in all the glory watching on VHS.
That's true. So we hadn't talked about it on the show last weekend. Went to Goodwill, and I've been looking for a VCR for a while. I know it's weird. I know it's random, but I've been looking for one because there's a lot of movies I have from when I was a kid on VHS that you can't find anywhere. They're not on any streaming. You can't buy them on Amazon. They're not on Disney Plus. So I went and bought a VCR. Been looking for one on eBay. They're no lie $200.
Yeah.
So I just keep going to Goodwill, and I'm like, eventually I'll find one. So I bought a VCR and I sent it to the group chat because I was real excited. And the first thing somebody says is, "Are you going to watch Tennessee's national championship on it?"
That was me.
Okay.
This first thing I thought of.
Um, Back to Tennessee. They've spent a grand total of 18 weeks in the college football playoff poll. They were at number one for 8 weeks. Um,
No, one week. One week.
one, good lord, what is wrong with me?
It was one week, and I think we all remember that week.
Yes.
what a week it was.
And it was really more like 96 hours because between when the rankings came out and when they lost.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. It is worth noting too. I think like they've only had 60 playoff polls because like they did it the first year they did it like super early and then they realized like that was dumb. So like then they moved it to like only doing it like what in late October, early November, like after the Florida or after the cocktail party.
yeah,
Usually when the first one comes out. The first year was way earlier. It was like mid September, like late September maybe.
I forgot about that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it kind of skewed that kind of skewed some stuff too. But like Ohio State and Alabama have been ranked in every poll, every CFP poll, I should say.
Um, Tennessee has only finished the season ranked in the playoff poll 4 times in the 10 years. They have not won the SEC in the 21st century. They have made the SEC title game 4 times: 01, 03, 04, and 07. Since 2000, they've only made a New Year's Six Bowl 6 times, but only once since 2010, and that was in that 2022 season. Since 2000, Tennessee has won at least 10 games 5 times. They won 11 in 2022, but the last time they had 10 wins before that 2022 season was 2011 when they last won the division. Since 2000, they have missed out on a bowl game 8 times, and they have averaged 7.3 wins per season since 2000.
So they've been very mid the last 24 years, or
Yes.
24 seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's.
yeah, glimpses of being good, making the SEC championship, and then or being close to it, being the number one team in the college football playoff poll one week, one poll. But yeah, again, uh, since integration happened, they've only won one national championship. They've only won the SEC a handful of times in what 60 years.
Yeah.
So
The century has not been kind to Tennessee. I mean, they went through some jokes of coaches to
yeah,
uh, to get them to the point that they're at with Josh Heupel. And honestly, Tennessee is one of the teams that I don't think deserves blue blood status anymore, but that has a clear and definitive path to get back to it.
mhm.
Like if they, I think last year is going to be an outlier for the Josh Heupel era. Just, just being honest. Freshman
Okay,
quarterback wasn't ready. They had to go with Joe Milton, but they're going to consistently have the offense to compete with the big game, with the big teams in the SEC. Probably going to make the 12 team playoff more often than not, and especially if they expand it to 14 or 16 teams, whatever they're talking about. Once again, more often than not. So it's more of a what can you do when you get there than it is can you get there,
yeah.
which is a huge change for this program, especially what they did under Derek Dooley and then Butch Jones and then Jeremy Pruitt. And now they have a clear path.
Yeah,
So Tennessee
they have an
has a
identity.
chance.
Yeah, they have an identity now, which is something that
And it's not bricks
the
and
next team,
mortars.
yeah, it's. I mean, their identity is them having an identity is more than what the next team we're going to talk about can say.
Yes. Um, I really think Florida could probably go in the next tier, but we're going to leave them in this tier out of respect for what they've done in the past more than anything. Um, 2 BCS championships, '06 and '08, 28 weeks ranked in the college football playoff poll. They peaked at number 6 for 3 weeks. They have 0 playoff appearances. Since between 2000 and 2023, they had 9 double-digit win seasons. And they've also had 3 seasons when they were not bowl eligible. Since 2000, Florida's averaged 7.29 wins per season. And the last 4 seasons, they are 25 and 25 and have the probably toughest schedule in college football over the next 2 years. They've gone through 7 head coaches this century, and they're probably the most roller coaster program of any team on this list.
Yeah,
I mean, in what was it, 2019? No, 2020. In 2020, they were arguably one of the best teams in the country. They took Alabama down to the wire in the SEC championship game.
Hmm.
In 2021, they were awful and fired their head coach.
Well, and then in 2020, I mean, okay, again, it was a 10 win or 10 game season. They went 8-4 that year. They still lost 4 games.
Yeah, and they lost regular season to A&M. That was the
Mhm.
Mullen infamous. They had way too many people in the stadium speech, and then he
Yeah.
was like, "They have way too many people here for it to be safe. Let's pack the swamp." Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Good.
and then they lost to LSU with the infamous shoe throw.
Hmm.
Those were their two regular season losses. They finished 8-2, still a chance to get in the playoff because of how weird a year 2020 was. Then they lose to Bama, and then they go out and lose their bowl game to, I believe, Oklahoma.
I think it was Oklahoma. That sounds right.
And they, whoever it was, beat the shit out of them. And Dan Mullen goes, "Well, this wasn't 2020's team. This was 2021's team." So he just foreshadowed how bad they were going to be in 2021.
Yeah. He was right. He was
He
right.
was. Dan Mullen, right. Not something we say very often.
Put that on a graphic. Dan Mullen was right.
But yeah, no, I mean, if Florida hadn't done what they had done in the 90s and up until Urban left, Florida's in the next tier down. That's really
Yeah.
what it was. It was Florida's dominance between the year 2000 and 2008 that got them into this tier.
Yeah, like you said, they fluctuate more than anybody on this list, and their path looks a lot more tough than or longer than it would be for like even like Tennessee. That's also been not great at all this century, but it
Yeah,
seems like it's a tougher go for them for sure.
I agree mainly because if we're being entirely honest, their schedule the next 2 years, they're probably going to be looking for another head coach.
Hmm.
Just like I'm not necessarily saying that I think Billy Napier's a bad coach. I think he's a good coach, got put in a bad situation, but it's Florida. They don't accept this new standard that they've made for themselves.
Yeah, they
So
haven't met in 15 years.
right, right. Like if they're not competing for a national championship, which once again they haven't done since 2008, they are angry. Which
Mhm.
okay, I get it. But at the same time, you have the toughest schedule in college football. Your team is actually recruiting at a phenomenal level right now compared to what you were doing under your last couple of coaches. Should they fire Billy Napier? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know what the answer is, but they're probably going to. Like I think getting bowl eligible with their schedule next year is going to be a feat.
Yeah, he's. I think it's gonna be more than their win loss and just seeing like development of guys, which is something that he hasn't really been able to do either. If anybody worth a damn is left, really, like for the most part. The Princely kid that we talked about a lot during the portal went over to Ole Miss and talked crap about how he wasn't developed properly at Florida, which he's right.
And that was under three defensive coordinators in
Yeah.
4 years.
So the instability is a big part of it too. So I don't know what Florida wants out of a head coach or like what their identity is they clearly have not had one really since like Will Muschamp left. They haven't had an identity. Like
Yeah,
their identity then was we're a defensive team. We don't play offense. We don't need a quarterback. But they haven't had an identity in 10 years.
yeah. And I think I think honestly Billy Napier's accepted his fate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's crazy for a guy that's still going out there and recruiting and still, doing off the field things at a high level. The reason I say that is because instead of saying, you know what, my offense hasn't really worked with anybody that I've had at quarterback. I'm going to hire an offensive coordinator. He's more of a, I'm going to do it my way and go down swinging.
Hmm.
So
I can
he
I can
will.
appreciate that.
I can too, but also if he, I honestly think that if he was willing to hire a coordinator and show that he's willing to change and get new ideas in there, might buy him another year.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it's kind of a, is he doing it to just accept his fate and not push off the inevitable, or does he really think that his system can work this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of doing the opposite of Jimbo, when like that last year, Jimbo hired Bobby
Petrino.
Petrino,
Yeah.
try to change it up a little bit, then ended up not working for him. So if Billy just stays steadfast and doesn't hire an OC, and when he gets fired at the next opportunity he has to get a job, then he can be like, you know what? What I learned was I need an offensive coordinator, and they can sell that hopium to whatever next program he's going to try to go to.
Yeah. I I don't know. Florida's to me just a big question mark this year and next
Mm,
year. Like what hell for next year? What is their coaching staff going to look like?
who knows?
Um, couple of other just giant question marks in college football. Teams that have 100% lost their blue blood status. First one up, Nebraska.
Yep.
Nebraska became a powerhouse when they were the only team to regulate diet and have a strength and conditioning program back in the 80s and 90s. They won three
Steroids,
titles. Do what?
steroids.
I I wasn't going to say it, but they won three titles in 4 years under Tom Osborne, 94, 95, and 97. Um, this century has not been kind in any way, shape, or form. Um, they do have one Heisman winner in 2001. Eric Crouch won the award, but the Cornhuskers have won an average of 7.16 games since 2000, 6 seasons of 10 or more wins. But they've also missed out on a bowl game 9 different times, including the last 7 seasons in a row.
Ooh, I didn't realize it was that bad. It was
Uh,
bad, that bad.
yeah. Matt Rule has already matched Scott Frost's best season at 5-7, and has already recruited better. And he's got a lot more guys out of the transfer portal that can make a difference. Nebraska is another one of these teams that I think with the fan base, I think with the coaching staff, with the facilities, they have the potential to get back to blue blood status.
Mhm.
But they have a much harder fight than Penn State. I
Yeah.
I really think that they're going to have to leave the Big Ten to actually have a chance.
Mhm.
I mean, it would take an insane year that no one sees coming for Nebraska to be top four in the Big Ten.
They need a lot of help, that's for sure. I think they put a lot of hope, like 2016 when we put all this hope into Jacob Eason. I'm 100% sure they're putting that same hope of like, making Dylan Raiola the savior as we did with Jacob Eason. I'm sure.
I, there's a big question mark to me because I
Yeah.
I truly, with Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, where where's Nebraska's path to being great?
At worst, they're probably like the 12th best team in the Big Ten, and at best, they're probably like eight, at least right
Right.
now. Yeah.
Their path
Uh,
to being good again includes turning around and turning the clock back quite a few years and going home to the Big 12.
or if they can just get some like non-detectable steroids and just really just load them up like they did in the 90s.
Hey, ask the Russians.
Doping Kings, yeah.
If you haven't seen that documentary, I can't remember what it's called. It's a good one.
What about the doping scandal they had?
Yes,
Okay, I have not. I haven't seen it.
entirely accidental documentary this dude made. And I say that so wild tangent here. This guy, he was a big fan of Lance Armstrong, so he wanted to make a documentary about how much doing steroids actually helps in bicycle racing. So like he competed in a race without steroids and then try to get in touch with people to learn how to do steroids safely to do the race again next year and see how much of an improvement it made.
Mm.
Okay, cool. You're making a documentary on steroids. All these doctors in the U.S. tell him to call this Russian doctor. And through conversations with this Russian doctor, the Russian doctor starts talking about how they got away with doping for the Winter Olympics.
Mm,
And that's what the documentary turns into.
that's hilarious.
It's wild. The
Hmm.
Russian doctor's still in hiding in the U.S. because the Russians are still sending people to kill him.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, it is definitely a good one to watch. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure if you just look up Russian steroid documentary, it'll come up.
Yeah.
Last team we're talking about today, Miami. I'm sure everybody saw this coming. Because if you break the U in half, turn one of your hands, it's just a couple of L's. That's all they've taken lately.
Yep.
Kind of talked about last week how they were the team of the late 80s, early 90s, and then again in the early 2000s. But this program really started to fall off when they left the Big East for the ACC. They fired their title winning coach, Larry Coker, after the 2003 season and have only had a single double digit win season since.
Wow. Huh.
2017 with damn good dog Mark Richt. They've averaged 8.08 wins since 2000. They have 10 or more win seasons since 2000. Four of them started the century and then 2017. Last conference title, 2003. The last time they played for one was 2017.
Sheesh. Yeah.
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 Just a little fun fact here. They've only had coaches whose first name started with M since the year 2016. Their last three head coaches.
The more you know.
Um, Mark Richt, Manny Diaz, Mario Cristobal.
Oh, I forgot about Manny Diaz. Damn, okay.
Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, Miami is one of those teams, we've talked about it on and off here, but Miami has a path to be good again. Like
Mm,
they have a path to be in the bad boys of college football. They really do. Because people across the country still hate them from what the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
yeah.
The problem is they have talent. They're consistently good enough at recruiting to make some splashes. They have big name coaches. But for whatever reason, the coaches get to South Beach and don't remember what they're doing.
Mm,
I mean, last year, had a chance to beat Georgia Tech and decided instead of taking a knee, we're going to run the ball, lose the game on the last play.
that should have been a game we talked about something to go rewatch because that game was wild.
Yeah, that's true. But no, I mean, like Miami could truly be back. Like they
Mm,
have just as clear of a path as Texas did. I mean, at least Texas before this year, and I say that because weak ass conference.
mhm.
Now you have the ability to use all your private donors from all these big names that have gone to your school to get a ton of fucking money and start paying these players through NIL. You can, with the money you have and how many good players are in South Florida, you can get any player in the country you want to. You just have to put it together. You have a, what, 10-piece puzzle that you still haven't figured out yet? What the hell are you doing?
It's funny that they average more wins per season than Nebraska, Florida, Tennessee, and they're just under Penn State. So if you're just going strictly from a wins perspective, they do have a path. They haven't been god awful, but they haven't been elite in 20 years.
They probably have the clearest path, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Because, Tennessee, I said, has a clear path. But now they have Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma they have to play every year. Four
Mm,
damn good teams.
yeah.
None of the Big 10 teams that are middling have a path.
No.
They have way too much they have to fight against. Miami
Mm,
has two legitimate contenders in the ACC they have to get past. And they don't play them both every year.
right. Right.
Tennessee plays Georgia and Alabama up until this point every year, and they play again for the next 2 years.
Mm,
And you have Miami, who doesn't play both Clemson and Florida State every year, and somehow can't be good. Like, I'm not a Miami fan. A lot of Miami fans are annoying, and they
Yeah.
don't show up to games.
Mhm.
But what are you doing?
I,
Like, they're the opposite of Penn State.
yeah.
They're not good enough, and their fans are pissed off about it. So they keep firing head coaches, and they keep getting their hires wrong.
So this year they start off in the swamp, which again we talked about before. But Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Virginia Tech, at Cal, which
Cal's in the ACC.
I was gonna say, I'm like, I forgot they joined the ACC. At Louisville, they do have Florida. They play at home against Florida. Then Duke at Georgia Tech, at home against Wake Forest, and then they finish up against Fran Brown and the Syracuse Orange. So they don't play. They don't play Clemson this year. So they have a path. That's a
You
very,
ha-
very doable ACC schedule too.
you have two, maybe three tough games on schedule.
Yeah, like what?
Maybe four, depending
Oh,
on South Florida, because
mhm.
we're gonna be doing a big deep dive in the group of five here soon. But
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I really don't.
At a minimum, there should be a 9-win team every year,
Yeah,
every year with the schedule.
and they have one double-digit win season since 2004.
Hmm. One of their senior day against Wake Forest, if you go on ESPN, you can get in right now for as low as $14. Sad.
That is sad. Um, I think we're gonna go ahead and get out of here because this one's been a little bit long, and by now everybody's talked about the Georgia win at Ohio State to get to the NIT Final Four. But we're super happy about that. Everything we said last week about the basketball program still applies. We're excited for the future moving forward. Um, but if you're not already, follow us on social media at nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, nothing finer pod on TikTok. Just search us on Facebook and YouTube. And as always, guys, remember there is nothing finer in the land.
Than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.